What if 2026 isn't just another year on the calendar, but a turning point written thousands of years ago, long before modern nations, technology, or global crises existed? The Bible recorded prophecies that many believe were meant for a specific moment in human history. Our moment: wars without clear endings, moral confusion, economic shaking, natural disasters increasing in intensity, coincidence, or warnings unfolding in real time. Tonight, we are not talking about vague predictions or symbolic poetry. We are talking about 10 biblical prophecies that some scholars and believers say align shockingly with what the world is heading toward in 2026. If even one of them is true, it could change how you see the future and how you live today. But here's the unsettling question. What if the signs were never meant to scare us, but to wake us up? Stay with me until the end, because the final prophecy isn't the most dramatic, it's the most personal. And once you hear it, you may never look at 2026 the same way again. What if the very fabric of our reality, the timeline we inhabit, is not merely unfolding but fulfilling an ancient, divine design? What if the signs, once whispered in sacred texts, are now roaring into existence, demanding our attention, our introspection, and our readiness? We stand at the precipice of such a revelation, looking back at the year 2025, a year that, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, marked not just a turning point, but the undeniable beginning of something far greater, far more profound than any of us could have truly imagined. It was, as Scripture foretold, the beginning of birth pains. I remember the start of that year with a chilling clarity. January 2025 arrived, not with the usual promise of new beginnings, but with an apocalyptic spectacle over the city of Los Angeles. Devastating wildfires, unlike anything seen before, swept through the hills, painting the skies a terrifying, blood-red hue. It wasn't just fire. Eyewitnesses spoke of embers and ash raining down, creating a terrifying rain of fire that seemed to fall from the very heavens. It was a scene that echoed with an unnerving resonance, a vivid, fiery parallel to the prophecy in Revelation, speaking of hail and fire mixed with blood. The world watched, aghast, as a symbol of human aspiration seemed to burn under a sky that looked like a canvas of judgment. As the calendar pages turned, the tremors of change only intensified. March 2025 brought a seismic shock to Southeast Asia. A powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake ripped through Myanmar, unleashing not only widespread destruction, but also igniting countless fires. Eyewitness accounts spoke of pillars of black smoke rising miles into the atmosphere, so dense and pervasive they blotted out the sun. It was a scene that brought to mind the ancient words of the prophet Joel: blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. The earth itself seemed to groan, a physical manifestation of the spiritual upheaval brewing beneath the surface of global events, and as if nature itself were conspiring to awaken us. March also saw Typhoon Alfred unleash its fury upon Australia's east coast. This wasn't just another storm, it was a tempest of unprecedented scale, bringing catastrophic flooding that submerged entire towns. Images of crocodiles, displaced by the raging waters, swimming through what used to be suburban streets, flooded our screens. It was a stark, almost surreal fulfillment of Luke's prophecy, the roaring of the sea and the waves, a visceral reminder of nature's untamed power and the fragility of human existence in its path. Yet, beyond the spectacular displays of nature's wrath, humanity was locked in its own escalating conflicts. The rumors of wars that Jesus warned about were no longer whispers, but deafening roars. Russia, with its nuclear threats, continued to cast a long, dark shadow over Ukraine, while tensions simmered dangerously in Taiwan, threatening to ignite a global conflagration. It felt as though the world was holding its breath, teetering on the brink of an abyss, a constant state of anxiety permeating our daily lives. In the midst of this global unrest, the civil war in Myanmar continued its brutal trajectory, descending into depths of inhumanity that shocked even the most hardened observers. Reports emerged of extreme brutality, of a chilling loss of compassion, where human life seemed to hold no value. It was a harrowing manifestation of Timothy's prophecy of perilous times, when people would become without natural affection and brutal, a chilling testament to the erosion of basic human empathy. Simultaneously, a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions unfolded in Sudan. The ongoing civil war had crippled agriculture, leading to severe famine and soaring wheat prices. News reports grimly detailed how a quart of wheat cost a day's wages, a direct, heartbreaking echo of Revelation's black horseman, symbolizing famine. It was a stark reminder of the delicate balance of our global food supply and the devastating consequences of conflict on the most vulnerable. But it was in the Middle East, the ancient crucible of prophecy, that events truly began to accelerate with an almost terrifying precision in July 2025. Israel found itself embroiled in a multi-front conflict with Iran, Gaza, and Lebanon. The scale of the conflict and the global outrage it provoked was immense. Nations worldwide condemned Israel's actions, and the international community seemed to turn its back, uniting in opposition. It was impossible not to recall Zechariah's chilling prophecy of Jerusalem becoming a cup of trembling for all nations, a focal point of global contention and strife. Then came the truly unprecedented. From northern Israel, Hezbollah launched a series of sophisticated, AI-controlled missile attacks, powered by advanced Iranian technology. The precision, the coordination, the sheer technological leap sent shockwaves through military analysts worldwide. This wasn't just another conflict. It was a chilling glimpse into a future where technology amplified the ancient hatreds. For those studying prophecy, it was a moment of profound recognition, seen as the very formation of the Gog and Magog alliance prophesied in Ezekiel 38, bringing together nations against Israel in a way never before conceived. Amidst this, Syria, already fractured by years of internal chaos, faced direct Israeli airstrikes on Damascus in July. The ancient city, a symbol of enduring history, was battered, its infrastructure further crippled. For generations, Isaiah's prophecy that Damascus would become a heap of ruins had been pondered. Now, it felt as though the stage was being meticulously set, prepared for a final, devastating fulfillment of that ancient word. And finally, far to the east, China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea, coupled with its massive military exercises, took on a new, ominous significance. These weren't just geopolitical power plays for those who understood the prophetic timeline. They were seen as a symbolic drying up the river, a metaphorical clearing of the path, as described in Revelation, to prepare for the kings from the east to advance, ultimately, towards Armageddon. The pieces were moving on a global chessboard, guided by an unseen hand, towards an inevitable, climactic confrontation. As 2025 drew to a close, the cumulative weight of these events was undeniable. From the raging fires of Los Angeles to the seismic shocks of Myanmar, from the floods in Australia to the famines in Sudan, from the brutal conflicts in the Middle East to the strategic maneuvers of global powers, it became clear that we were witnessing a convergence, a symphony of prophetic fulfillment. The birth pains had begun, and they were intensifying with each passing month. The world had irrevocably changed, and a new era was dawning. One that pointed with chilling accuracy towards the year 2026. For many, 2026 was not just another year on the calendar. It was predicted to be the beginning of the 7 darkest years in human history. The Great Tribulation itself. This wasn't mere speculation. It was based on what many called God's mathematics. A divine calculus that revealed a profound alliance forming, a modern prophetic axis of China, Russia, and Iran, poised to reshape the very destiny of nations. Poised to reshape the very destiny of nations, the year 2025, in retrospect, was not merely a series of unfortunate events, but a meticulously orchestrated symphony of prophetic fulfillment. It was a year that peeled back the veil, revealing the ancient scriptures not as distant parables, but as a living, breathing blueprint for our present reality. The birth pains that Jesus spoke of were no longer theoretical. They were a global phenomenon, intensifying with each passing month, touching every continent, every nation, every soul. Consider the crucible that Israel found itself in. The conflicts with Iran, Gaza, and Lebanon escalated dramatically throughout 2025, drawing global condemnation and opposition in a way never before seen. The world's focus narrowed, its judgment sharpened, and Jerusalem, the ancient city of peace, became a flashpoint for international fury. It was as if Zechariah's prophecy that Jerusalem would become a cup of trembling for all nations was unfolding before our very eyes. The nations were indeed trembling, not just in fear, but in a collective, almost visceral, opposition to Israel, a chilling echo of what was foretold thousands of years ago. Meanwhile, the shadow of nuclear conflict loomed larger than ever. Russia's rhetoric grew more aggressive, its threats more explicit, as tensions in Ukraine and Taiwan reached critical levels. The world held its breath, caught in a perilous geopolitical dance. These weren't just political maneuvers. They were the rumors of wars that Jesus warned about. Whispers of cataclysmic conflict that permeated the global consciousness, sowing fear and uncertainty. The very air seemed charged with an unspoken dread, a sense that the world was teetering on the brink. Then came July 2025, and an event that sent shivers down the spines of military analysts and prophecy watchers alike. Hezbollah, from northern Israel, launched a series of eye-controlled missile attacks. Employing advanced Iranian technology, these weren't conventional attacks. They were precision strikes, guided by artificial intelligence, demonstrating a terrifying leap in destructive capability. For those attuned to the prophetic narrative, this was more than just a new form of warfare. It was seen as the chilling formation of the Gog and Magog alliance, prophesied in Ezekiel 38. A coalition of nations empowered by modern technology aligning against Israel, setting the stage for an ultimate apocalyptic confrontation. The ancient texts spoke of a time when nations from the north would descend. Now, technology had given that prophecy a terrifying new dimension. Even nature itself seemed to cry out, bearing witness to these unfolding prophecies. In January 2025, devastating wildfires tore through Los Angeles, but these were no ordinary fires. The skies above the city turned a blood red, an eerie, apocalyptic hue, as rain of fire seemed to descend from above, turning affluent neighborhoods into infernos. The images were stark, surreal, and for many, an unmistakable echo of Revelation's prophecy of hail and fire mixed with blood. It was as if the very elements were aligning with ancient warnings, painting a vivid, terrifying picture of judgment and cleansing. Far from the Western world, another critical piece of the prophetic puzzle was locking into place. In Sudan, the civil war raged with unrelenting ferocity, leading to severe famine and soaring wheat prices. The humanitarian crisis was immense, but the prophetic implications were even more profound. Revelation speaks of the black horseman, symbolizing famine, where a quart of wheat costs a day's wages. In Sudan, this prophecy moved from parchment to painful reality, as basic sustenance became an unaffordable luxury for millions. A stark fulfillment of a 2,000-year-old warning, and the human heart, too, seemed to darken. In Myanmar, the civil war descended into extreme brutality, marked by a shocking loss of compassion. Reports emerged of atrocities so heinous, so devoid of basic human empathy, that they chilled the soul. This wasn't just war. It was a societal unraveling, a terrifying manifestation of Timothy as prophecy of perilous times when people would be without natural affection and brutal. It was a stark reminder that as the world hurtles towards its prophetic destiny, the very fabric of human kindness can fray and tear, revealing a chilling emptiness within. As if to punctuate these earthly woes, the earth itself groaned. In March 2025, a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Myanmar, unleashing a cascade of destruction. Fires erupted, sending pillars of black smoke into the already blood-red skies. This wasn't just a natural disaster. For many, it was the fulfillment of Joel's prophecy of blood, fire, and pillars of smoke, a cosmic sign that the heavens and earth were in travail, signaling the imminence of a greater unfolding. And the waters, too, bore witness. In the same month, Typhoon Alfred, a storm of unprecedented ferocity, struck Australia's east coast. It unleashed severe flooding, transforming urban landscapes into raging rivers. The images were surreal. Crocodiles, displaced by the deluge, were seen swimming in the streets, a testament to nature's upheaval. This terrifying display of elemental power resonated deeply with Luke's prophecy of the roaring of the sea and the waves, a sign of the times when the very forces of nature would be unleashed, signaling the world's final dramatic acts. As 2025 drew to a close, the cumulative weight of these events was undeniable. From the raging fires of Los Angeles to the seismic shocks of Myanmar, from the floods in Australia to the famines in Sudan, from the brutal conflicts in the Middle East to the strategic maneuvers of global powers, it became clear that we were witnessing a convergence, a symphony of prophetic fulfillment. The birth pains had begun, and they were intensifying with each passing month. The world had irrevocably changed, and a new era was dawning, one that pointed with chilling accuracy towards the year 2026. For many, 2026 was not just another year on the calendar. It was predicted to be the beginning of the 7 darkest years in human history, the Great Tribulation itself. This wasn't mere speculation. It was based on what many called God's mathematics, a divine calculus that revealed a profound alliance forming, a modern prophetic axis of China, Russia, and Iran, poised to reshape the very destiny of nations. The stage was set, the curtain was about to rise, and the world was about to enter a period of unprecedented challenge, but also, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, a period of ultimate hope and divine intervention. This was not the end, but the beginning of the end, signaling the imminent return of the King of Kings. This was not the end, but the beginning of the end, signaling the imminent return of the King of Kings. And so, as the final days of 2025 melted into the nascent dawn of 2026, a profound realization settled upon the hearts of many. The world had irrevocably shifted. The year just passed, with its relentless drumbeat of conflict, calamity, and strategic realignment, had not merely been a collection of unfortunate events. No, it was a meticulously orchestrated symphony, a crescendo of ancient prophecies finding their voice in our modern age. Every wildfire, every earthquake, every roar of the sea, every clash of nations, every chilling act of brutality, every whisper of war. They were not random acts of chaos, but precise strokes on a divine canvas painting a picture of an unfolding future foretold thousands of years ago. For those who had been watching, with eyes open and hearts attuned to the ancient texts, 2026 was not just another tick on the calendar. It was predicted to be the threshold, the very beginning of what biblical prophecy describes as the 7 darkest years in human history, the Great Tribulation itself. This wasn't born of fear-mongering or idle speculation, but from a deep study of what many called God's mathematics, a divine calculus woven into the very fabric of time and prophecy. It spoke of a precise timing, a season for every purpose under heaven, and a moment when the final pieces of an epic puzzle would click into place. The prophetic axis, once a theoretical concept, had solidified before our very eyes. China, flexing its formidable economic and military might, continued its aggressive posture in the South China Sea, pushing boundaries, asserting dominance. This was more than geopolitical maneuvering. It was interpreted as the drying up of the river, a symbolic clearing of the way, as described in Revelation, preparing for the kings from the east to advance towards the climactic confrontation at Armageddon. Russia, emboldened and resurgent, continued to cast a long shadow over Eastern Europe. Its nuclear threats no longer mere rhetoric, but a chilling reality. And Iran, the ancient Persia, intertwined its destiny with these burgeoning powers. its technological advancements and regional ambitions drawing it ever closer into a formidable, modern prophetic alliance. This trinity of nations, China, Russia, and Iran, emerged as the modern prophetic axis, a convergence of power and purpose that mirrored the very alliances foretold in the scriptures, poised to reshape the destiny of nations and set the stage for the final act, the Great Tribulation. The very phrase can evoke dread, conjuring images of unparalleled suffering and despair. And indeed, the prophecies speak of a time of unprecedented hardship, a period when the earth itself groans under the weight of humanity's choices, when faith will be tested to its absolute limits, and when the forces of darkness will seem to hold sway. Yet, for those with spiritual discernment, it is also a time of profound divine purpose, a crucible designed to purify, to refine, and to ultimately reveal the unwavering sovereignty of God. It is a period of sifting, where true faith will shine brightest against the encroaching shadows, where the wheat will be separated from the chaff, and where the hearts of humanity will be laid bare. This era, though marked by tribulation, is not without its profound promise. For it is precisely in the deepest valleys that the light of hope shines, with the most piercing brilliance. The very signs that point to these challenging times are the same signs that herald an even greater, more glorious event, the imminent return of the King of Kings. Every tremor in the earth, every storm on the sea, every conflict among nations, every famine and pestilence, these are not just harbingers of darkness, but also the birth pangs of a new world, a world where righteousness will reign, where every tear will be wiped away, and where peace will finally be absolute and eternal. The motivational truth embedded within these prophecies is not one of fear, but of profound hope and urgent preparation. It is a call to awaken, to shake off spiritual slumber, and to draw closer to the source of all strength and comfort. It reminds us that even in the midst of global upheaval and personal trials, there is an anchor for the soul, a steadfast hope that transcends the temporary chaos of this world. It beckons us to examine our lives, to cultivate compassion in a world growing cold, to extend kindness where brutality abounds, and to hold fast to a faith that can move mountains, even mountains of despair. For those who navigate these tumultuous times with hearts fixed on the divine promise, the Great Tribulation is not an end, but a grand ushering in. It is the final dramatic act before the curtain rises on the most magnificent event in human history, the glorious return of Jesus Christ, not as a suffering servant, but as the triumphant King, coming to establish his eternal kingdom on earth. This is the ultimate resolution, the satisfying conclusion to all prophecy, the dawn of a new heaven and a new earth. So, as we stand on the precipice of 2026 and gaze into the unfolding future, let us not be overwhelmed by the shadows, but rather emboldened by the light of prophecy. Let us find strength in the understanding that nothing is random, nothing is outside of divine control. Let us live with purpose, with courage, and with an unshakable faith, knowing that every sign, every fulfillment, every moment of challenge is bringing us closer to that promised day. The stage is set, the final prophecies are being fulfilled, and the magnificent return of the King of Kings is not just a distant hope, but an imminent reality, beckoning us to look up, for our redemption draws near. This is our moment to be vigilant, to be brave, and to stand ready. For the greatest story ever told is about to reach its glorious, triumphant climax.